be a short meeting. So, and I'm hearing an echo of everything we do. So I'm Elaine Hill, chair, co-chair. Chris Jeck is also co-chair of his board. He's not here tonight. And then if we just want to go around the room and identify who's attending, starting with Mike at the top of the screen.
Mike Bell. I'm a committee member, board member.
I'm Mary Lou. I'm a board member because I'm a resident. Mike is a board member, but he is also a landscape architect.
Carol?
Carol Maywood, I'm a resident and a board member.
Carol?
Carol Maywood, I'm a resident and a board member.
And Peter, you want to introduce yourself? Peter's
Yes.
been asked to join this meeting because he's considering joining our board.
You want to introduce yourself? Peter.
My name is Peter Gavin, and currently I'm a consultant, and I was a former zoning examiner for the city of Tucson.
And Jody?
Oh, my name is Jody Brown. I'm the Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Tucson.
My name is Jody Brown. I'm the Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Tucson.
Okay, so it sounds like we've got a big old echo here, but we're going to go ahead and continue.
So it sounds like we've got a big old echo here, but we're going to go ahead.
Is everyone else hearing the echo too, or is it just me?
What?
Okay.
I think
Carol, I
actually,
think it's you
Coming from
echoing. If you'll put yourself on mute until you speak, that'd be helpful.
You echoing. If you'll put yourself on mute until you speak. I think I have my speaker silent, but I can hear what you're saying on the phone first, and then it comes through later on the computer.
Right. Okay. Well, this meeting only has a couple of agenda items. One is the nomination of a new board member, who's David Peets. He's attended at least 4 meetings. He's a property owner on Fort Lowell, and he submitted an application. And I think everything is in order. And Jody, can you let us know if everything's in order for him, except for this nomination, so he can go ahead and be appointed?
he still has to so I talked to the city clerk's office, and they need to get him on an agenda for mayor and council to actually appoint him. But yes, you can do your nomination process here. You also have minutes to approve, which is item number 2. Nomination of the new board member is item number 3.
Okay. Well, since I've already addressed it, can we go ahead and make the motion on item number 3?
Yeah.
I
So
move,
someone
this is
wanna make
Carol,
that
I move
nomination?
that, this is Carol, I move that we nominate Mr. Peets for board membership.
Second,
I second.
Mary Lou. All in
Mary Lou.
favor?
Aye.
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 No, Elaine. That's passed unanimously. Okay, moving back to item number 2, approval of minutes from June 28th. I think I already sent the corrected LAR to you, Jody,
Yes.
for that.
The only thing in reading over there, the minutes, the corrected one that you had sent and provided, there was a sentence about the public comments being provided with the minutes. They're actually not required. I had checked with the city clerk on this previously. This is not a public hearing. As long as there's a record of them and we have them saved in the file, they're not required to be uploaded with the minutes. That was my only comment on
So-
it, but
So where are they available?
I have them. I mean, and if you want them, I can send them to you. And they were emailed previously out to all board members.
No, I think we, sorry, further technical complications. I think we all have them. I'm just curious about if someone wanted to see them, where they would go.
They can request them from us, from the city, and we have record of them.
So we need them in
Okay.
our files regarding the property. So I'm trying to think if I've got a copy. If somebody could send a copy to me, I will file them with the plans that were submitted that night that we had, so that we can keep that all together in one spot.
I'll send you a copy of them, Mary Lou.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve the minutes from June 28th?
I move we approve.
I move. Go ahead.
Just
Mike,
move we approve the minutes with the additions noted.
Second,
second,
it's Carol.
Carol. All in favor, Mike,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Mary Lou,
Aye.
and Elaine. That's approved. They're called to the audience.
We
Hey.
did not receive any.
And so then number 5 is an update on the Tucson Pima County Historical Commission separation.
Sorry, I had to cough. And nobody needs to listen to my cough. Just to kind of back up a little bit so everybody is on the same page. A couple of years ago, the SHPO office had a meeting with the National Park Service. So as order goes, the National Park Service is up at the top, then it goes to SHPO, and then it goes to the CLGs. We are a CLG, the City of Tucson is a CLG. So a couple of years ago, we met with Eric Bonke from the State Historic Preservation Office, and he had a meeting with NPS, like it was a multi-state meeting with the National Park Service, NPS. And in that meeting, somebody had said, hey, can you have joint commissions or CLGs, certified local governments, operate together? And at the time, the NPS said, no, you can't do that. They should all be separated. So Eric, being the good public employee that he is, passed that information to us. We had started to work on it, and then the pandemic hit, and we lost basically a ton of staff. We all got sent home to work, and we went into emergency operation mode because we lost all the staff. And when the work that we had started to do kind of got set aside on the separation. And then probably more recently, about a year or so ago, Chris Cody was invited down to speak to mayor and council and explained that, yes, the city of Tucson had been given this direction to separate, and they had not been following through on that in a concerted effort. So mayor and council directed city staff to then seriously on separating from Pima County in the historical commission. As we started to look at the separation, we also noted that there were some updates that needed to be done to the code, just general updates. And we started looking, we hired Michael Baker International as a consulting firm to help us because we're still understaffed. So they started working on looking at other cities for best practices and how they're operating. And we looked at a number of different things. We looked at how minor reviews were conducted and what was being done under a minor review. We looked at the designation of interiors. We looked at deconstruction, which is basically instead of when you demolish a building, instead of everything going to the landfill, you look to parse out those materials for reuse, upcycling, so to speak. We looked at unpermitted work and how and if there are fees associated with unpermitted work. We looked at the historic preservation officer signing the decision letter, and we looked at more staff. And we also looked at how we operate with our two-tier review, which is the advisory boards and the plans review subcommittee. We had, as part of this, we had then 4 stakeholder meetings. The first meeting were one-on-one interviews, and then for the second, third, and fourth meetings, we actually widened it. So it went from 15 people who were predominantly the chairs of each of the advisory boards, commission chair and vice chair. We had the Tucson Historic Preservation Foundation Executive Director, Damian Klenko. We had other architects and developers who had worked in the historic preservation zone. You see them a lot because they come work in the historic preservation zones. And then from that initial 15, we expanded it to around 35, 36 people for our stakeholder meetings. So the consultants went through all the kind of different things that we were looking at. And with the last one, which was June 16th, we had some initial recommendations that we were looking at. They included staff doing more of the minor reviews. So fences and like roof replacement, stuff like that, little small things, doing minor reviews. The designation of interiors would be limited to individually listed properties and city-owned properties. Deconstruction, which is probably going to be a wider work item because of is it feasible to actually do deconstruction? There's a lot of questions around that. And unpermitted work and fees associated with the unpermitted work, which is also going to be a wider discussion because the fee process is a different process. And then the historic preservation officer signing the decision letters versus the director of PDSD and more staff. We also looked at the composition of what a new commission would look like. Currently, I don't know if you are all aware, but there's 23 members on the historic commission. About half of those are appointed by the county supervisors, and then the other half is by mayor and council. And then there's one rep from the city of South Tucson. So we started to kind of look at the makeup of the commission as a whole and narrowed it down to 9 to 13 members. We also looked at incorporating, so this is the controversial item, looked at incorporating the advisory boards into the commission so that representatives from the advisory boards would be on the plans review subcommittee. So instead of a 2-tier review process, it would be a 1-stop review process. And members from the advisory board would then be able to speak to their individual districts and concerns about the individual districts. I will tell you there was some thoughts of, as we kind of looked at like ways to organize that maybe there was an architectural board that sat within the neighborhood association so that they could then inform the representative who had been appointed to the plans review subcommittee. And the plans review subcommittee meetings are always public meetings. So members of the neighborhood could show up and voice their concerns about a project that was going if they wanted to, but they would have a rep on the board that would then speak to any concerns and be able to vote. It was not a popular recommendation, to put it nicely. A number of letters have since gone out, just recently this week, actually, a number of letters have since gone out to mayor and council expressing concerns about the incorporation of the advisory boards into the plans review subcommittee. During our last stakeholder meeting, literally during our last stakeholder meeting, we received a letter from the SHPO office that said NPS was now taking a second look of the joint commissions. They they had identified a number of cities statewide or nationwide that had operated as joint committees. And so there's some in Montana and there's some in Idaho, like Spokane, Washington, and its county that it sits in, they operate as a joint commission. So they are actually now going to study the whole joint commission thing. And so we're not really sure how long it's going to take NPS to do that. It could take them a year. It could take them 10 years. I asked a SHPO point blank, how long does that usually take? And that was their response. In the meantime, because of the concern about the advisory boards and the new direction that we're receiving from the State Historic Preservation Office, we're taking a pause on the process. We are going to go back. We plan to go back to mayor and council, probably not August, probably September-ish, October-ish, in a study session, and give them the new information and get more direction from mayor and council. So at this time, we're putting a pause on the whole process as we kind of rethink the advisory boards, get ready to go back to mayor and council. We do not have a date for mayor and council to date. I haven't even started the staff report for it. So we're still trying to figure out what's the best date for that. Once we do get a date for that, then I will notify you and all of the advisory boards, and you're welcome to attend. Study sessions don't generally have public comment unless a council member wants it, but you can always put in your thoughts if you want to. If we get direction to continue forward, then we may have another stakeholder meeting. If we don't have another stakeholder meeting, then we will start the work sessions. The work sessions, we anticipate going to the full commission, to planning commission, and then to mayor and council. Those are all public meetings, and I will notify you when we have those. So you're welcome to show up and voice your concern or your support or whatever about any of the items that we're talking about. I will say that in the whole of this, regardless of how it comes out, if everything stays in its current format, or if there's some stuff that stays in its current format and we have changes to some other items, that we will be asking for more staff. It is a little bit of an overload with just Michael and myself working on everything. So we will be asking for more staff and hopefully get that through this whole thing too. But pretty much that's the update on the separation. If you have questions, please let me know.
I have one, Jody. A part that I'm not understanding as you're talking about this work group or work study group with mayor and council, I'm not sure who's representing me at that meeting. Unless you're saying that Elaine, who's been on the stakeholders group, is part of the voice of that meeting, because otherwise it sounds like somebody's making a recommendation that has not necessarily been founded on the people that it involves. So I guess I'm just not sure what.
So
what
I
that
understand.
means.
Yeah. So for the study session, it's not these items that I just discussed that we had discussed during the stakeholder meeting. We're not giving recommendations to them. It's more like, hey, can you give us direction? Staff's always going to take their direction from mayor and council. And their direction could be continue on with the process, or, don't continue on, stay with the county. It's more direction. It's not these are the recommendations, because ultimately we have to go back for anything that happens within the city. You get direction from mayor and council. They're like, this is the way it rolls. And then you do the work. Then you have to go, with the stakeholders and everything. Then you go back to the planning commission or the historic commission, and then mayor and council again. And then mayor and council at the last will vote something into being. So the study session that I'm talking about isn't to vote something into being, it's just to get clarification on the direction that they want us to head. Like there's a fork in the road. Do we go left or right? Does that make sense?
It kind of, but if they're saying to make some, I understand if you're just talking about that rule that had to do with SHPO and the National Park Service, if that's just trying to figure out what they wanted us to do, and now mayor and council directed us initially to have the city and the county be separate. If they are saying continue with that, or we can stop with that concern because they found other incidents of it across the country, then I guess I understand that. But if it has anything to do with how our processes change, then it doesn't make sense to me.
Understood.
Okay.
I understood what you're saying. I mean, I will tell you, it will come up. And we will get direction from them, and their direction, they've gotten a lot of letters. So their direction could be, those stay, or we want you, the historic commission is writing a letter about the advisory boards where they want a different study. They're requesting a different study. So, I mean, it could be that. So as much as I try to do the Jedi mind control trick on everybody, it never works for me. And so the mayor and council it's their prerogative to do what they want and to vote what they want. So there will definitely be a discussion, I'm sure, about the advisory boards, but it's not a final decision, because there will still have to be other meetings where it's an open forum to discuss before mayor and council takes any action. So the study session is just for direction.
So where does that leave the county? I mean, is the county doing the same thing?
The county is also pausing, yes, in their separation. The county won't separate from us until we're ready to separate. They were moving faster in their process. We put all of our stuff together. We put the separation and code updates together, but the county actually was doing the separation, and then they're going to come back as a part 2 and do code updates. So they're still like us. They're just doing it as 2 separate parts. But they were never going to separate from us until we were ready to go.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're just on a, they've even sent out letters, so nothing's happening there either. When I say letters, I meant to the county supervisors.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I know that Fort Lowell Neighborhood Association, Old Fort Lowell, sent a letter today. And I think all the other historic zone all the other historic zones, neighborhood associations have sent letters, as far as I know, from what I've heard.
The
Because,
only one,
like you said, no one's happy about it.
well, the only one I don't think has sent one is Barrio, and I think they're gearing up to send one.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you get copies of those?
I get copies sometimes straight from the source, and sometimes I get them in a roundabout way.
Okay.
I have.
I can copy you on the letter from Fort Lowell. Yeah.
I
You
already
have Old Fort Lowell? Okay, good. Okay.
Sometimes
Yeah, I
they
think we
trickle down.
were all in June, we were all surprised that that was one of the recommendations, was to disband the advisory boards.
And we're taking it seriously, and we're looking at some options. Like I said, we might have another stakeholder meeting. We'll see what comes from it. We're discussing it internally. But yeah, that's right now, we're just on a pause until we figure out where to go.
Okay.
This is Carol. I have a question. This stakeholder meeting does not include any representation from the historic districts or the neighborhoods?
It did, actually. So it included all the chairs of the advisory boards. It included the chair and the vice chair of the Historic Commission. It included the executive director of the Tucson Historic Preservation Foundation. We had people who were owners who had been through the process of historic landmarks and of the just contributing properties within the historic preservation zone. We had some developers, we had some architects, we had people who represented the tribes. We had, the county was there. We also had, you're getting me off the top of my head. I'm trying to remember everybody. We had some of the subcommittee members from the commission that were there, like the landscape subcommittee and the transportation subcommittee, but they sit on the historic commission. We had people like Helen Erickson, who sits on the Armory Park advisory board. It was a pretty, I think, pretty good mix of people. It's a total of like 35, 36 people for the stakeholder meetings.
So out of that number, just one representative from each historic district?
No, I would say there was more than one representative from each historic district, because we also had neighbors who had been, people who live in the historic zones who had been through the process.
How were they selected?
How were they selected? They were selected because they had been through the process. We staff had, they had been through the process recently, so it wasn't like 10 years ago that they had been through the process. Some of the architects and the developers, they're just names that we had seen come through because they were always doing work in the historic districts. Like Bill Mackey, he always is in the historic districts, and Bob Lanning, who's always in the historic districts doing work. So it's just a number of different people that we were familiar with and knew that owned property or had done work in the historic districts. And not everybody, I will say not everybody, I think that it weighed heavier to the historic preservation side, but we also included people who maybe were outspoken. There was a homeowner from Armory Park who was outspoken against the process. And so we included people like him too, because you want to make it a balanced, you don't want people to be like, oh, it's all historic preservation. And you don't want people to be like, oh, it's all, developers. So we tried to make it an even playing field with the stakeholder group.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comment about this? I think one of the valuable things that's come out of this is that it has spurred a lot of activity with the preservation zones advisory boards, just to basically revitalized a lot of communication. So that's a good thing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to ask about that, because of the article in the paper a couple of weeks ago about the permit process and the backlog, I think that there might be some of that kind of backlash too, because the planning department's slow on all permits. How many cases were there in the last couple of years or 5 years even? What percentage of the permit process, of the permits that are processed through the city of Tucson, have to do with historic preservation or have to go through the historic permit process? It's got to be small, right?
I don't have a number for you off the top of my head, but I can look into it and get back to you.
I'm just curious because, there has been a lot of, there were a lot of noisy people who complained about how long it was taking them to get a permit because of the process. But in fact, I think they would have been delayed getting permits anyway, according to the newspaper. But I would just be curious about that. I think that's a matter of perspective in the city. And then also my other comment was about that article was that they're hiring staff in the for the city planning department, and that some of that's got to be directed towards the preservation office.
No,
Was it?
it was not. So a few weeks ago, the mayor and council did approve hiring staff, 14 new members, and those will be directed to engineering, site planning review, in those areas where zoning intake and stuff like that, where they're really crushed. I can tell you engineering review is buried, just utterly buried. And so there's like one dude doing it. So they're just feeling the pain immensely. And so those 14 staff members are actually for those other sections.
For technical positions, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, keep asking, Jody, because you guys do need help.
Yeah, it would be nice.
Want us to write a letter?
I have to say, it has in the stakeholder meetings, it wasn't something that we had initially talked about was getting more staff. We'd focused on just kind of, like I said, some of the code updates and the commission and the advisory boards. And a lot of people have been very supportive of we know that they need more staff and we want to see more staff. So it's been nice to see that support for sure. And we'll ask, like I said, any way that it comes out, if the advisory boards are maintained or they're incorporated or however it works out, we will ultimately be asking for more staff. And it may just be one staff person that we get, but that would be a huge help to have that one staff person.
True. Okay, any other comments from anyone?
Peter, any questions from your perspective?
Yeah, good. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Jody, I have not been involved in this and I know next to nothing about this. Could you tell me what was the purpose of the stakeholder meeting?
The stakeholder meeting was really to facilitate what we were proposing and doing. The consultant went through and did best practices. They looked at 3 other cities. They looked at Phoenix, Pasadena, California, and Salt Lake City, and kind of how they operated. As a side, they also looked at Washington, D.C. and New Orleans, which also has multi-tier review process. So they did, after the initial study, they kind of looked at those 2 additional cities to look at how they operate. But it was to kind of get feedback and see, what's supported, understand, what's the thoughts are and everything like that. So it's actually pretty common for a lot of processes to have stakeholder meetings,
Right,
anything.
Right, but my question was, what was the purpose of the stakeholder meeting? And let me see if I understand you. Was the purpose to provide information to those representatives that you mentioned with 35 people or whatever the number was? Was that the purpose of the meeting?
To provide information and get feedback.
Okay, to provide information. And did you say to get feedback?
Yes.
Okay, now what are you doing with that feedback?
What are we doing with that feedback?
Yeah.
We are, as I explained, we are going to take another look at the advisory boards. We are moving forward with the other items as, if we move forward. then we would move forward with those to mayor and council for recommendations.
Right, so the feedback you're getting from the stakeholders, they're saying to look at the advisory boards and look at the other things you just mentioned, or is that what you're doing?
The advisory board feedback or the stakeholder feedback is to maintain the advisory boards, but we're taking another look at them. And then the other items I would say are generally supported.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was trying to get at, to separate what is the staff recommendations are and what the proposals are and what the input or the feedback is, whether it's positive or negative. And then you take that and you go to the mayor and council and present that to them. Am I correct on that?
Well, we're still working through the process. So what the path was going to be, and like, I don't know if it's still going to be, is we would have the stakeholder meetings, then we would go to the historic commission, then we would go to planning commission, and then we would go to mayor and council. So the historic commission, planning commission, and mayor and council would be more like work sessions, open to whoever, and then presenting, this is what we found, or this is our thoughts, and then getting feedback from them and input from anybody and their mother who wants to. And then mayor and council at the end would vote however they vote to adopt.
Right. What I'm getting at, I was a member of the Pima County Planning and Zoning Commission, and I was also a member of the City of Tucson Planning Commission. So I understand the process, what you're saying, but I know, being on the commission and being the zoning examiner for 22 years, the staff always presents a recommendation. So I guess what I'm looking at, or if you can tell me, what would your recommendation or proposal be at this point?
Well, and that's part of us going back to mayor and council to get direction. We kind of put a pause. So I don't think that we have now. We had recommendations, initial recommendations at our last stakeholder meeting, but now I think we're stepping back from that momentarily.
Now, will there be any recommendations to the mayor and council as far as you know?
At the study session?
Yes.
I don't think we've formulated that yet, but I mean, really, it's just for direction.
Right. Well, because usually what happens is that the mayor and council, depending upon the professional staff, and you're a member of that, and you make a recommendation for the mayor and council, or you present alternatives to them, which way they want to go. As you mentioned, metaphorically, the fork in the road, do they take the high road or they take the low road? And I guess that's what I'm getting at. And I think the members of the Historical Advisory Board here that were in attendance tonight, I think that's what their question is that what, to dig down into it, what would be the proposal and what would the mayor and council be acting on?
To be honest, we haven't written a staff report. We don't even have a date for mayor and council yet. So I don't even think I have anything to give you on that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I just want to know that, because if there was, I mean, obviously it's an ongoing process and these things get developed over time. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, any of the board members that are in attendance this evening in this meeting, if that's what you're looking at, what's going to be proposed? I just throw that out as a general question.
I had a sort of a tag-on question to that. This is Mike Bell. I'm assuming that when you go into a study session with a mayor and council, it's the staff that's presenting the alternatives to the mayor and council, not the other way around. I would assume that they're looking for direction and information from you so that they can make a decision. And what that information and direction you give them is going to be really, really important. And I'd like to just point out that our board has been operating for many years, and it's actually does a lot more for the neighborhood than simply review plans and documents. All of those things are also in jeopardy if you're talking about eliminating a historic district board, that there's relationships and understandings about how things are done and what they should be happening that, frankly, two staff members from downtown just don't know. I mean, there's no way you would know the depth of sort of corporate memory and information that the board holds. So you should really consider that simplicity is not always the right answer, that the simplest, fastest way of getting something done may not be at all what's best for our historic district.
Thanks, Mike. And I think that the letter from the Old Fort Lowell Neighborhood Association did express some of that, what you just mentioned. But ultimately, when we go to the work sessions, if that's the direction we go with the Historic Commission and the Planning Commission and Mayor Council, you're more than welcome to provide those comments. And I'll let you know when those meetings are actually scheduled.
Good.
Okay. But
Okay.
until then,
Is there
you guys
anything else,
operate
Jody, is there anything else we need to do with this
right
in the
now.
interim before your study session? Do we need to provide anything else to you?
No, you guys just continue to operate as you operate. We're moving forward just like we have been. And I'm sure all the council district got the letters too. All the ward offices and the mayor and council got all the letters that everybody sent in. So they are aware of the concerns.
Yeah, I think we want to be able to actively participate, and it's kind of difficult the way it is right now with the way, a monthly board meeting.
And
Do you have links to the stakeholder meeting recordings that people could listen to if they wanted to?
Yeah, I do.
You wouldn't mind, would you send it?
I've sent them to all of the stakeholders previously. So if you have those emails, you still will have them, but if not, I'll send them out to you. I'll send them out again. Links to the recordings.
If you wouldn't mind.
I'm making a note, sorry. Okay. Will do.
Okay. That's all? There's anything else? From
Well, there's
Jody?
future agenda items if you guys want to talk about that.
No, I wanted to know if you had any other comments about number 5. But for future agenda items, are there any future agenda items? I'm aware of 2 minor projects coming up.
And those would be the ones that Michael would be setting up. You do for next month have a courtesy review for sure. For a guest house, I want to say it's 5354 East Fort Lowell, but don't quote me on that address because I was jotting that down someplace else from memory. And then potentially a full review for the courtesy review that you had last month. He should be in the process of submitting that.
and
That was 5301 East Fort Lowell, right?
Yes, I believe that was
The
5301.
schoolhouse property, new
Full
house.
House was before, yeah. Are you adding a guest house, Elaine, and didn't tell us?
No, that's Klinko's.
Ah, okay, okay. And then I think that membership, if we can keep Peter interested, I'd sure like to be able to make sure that when he has completed his second meeting with us, which would be next meeting, that we could make a formal nomination.
So are you asking to have the nomination on the next agenda or the one after that?
I think we can do it on the next agenda so long as he's attended 2 meetings. Is that your understanding, Mike or Carol, anybody?
I have no understanding. I don't understand.
Seems reasonable.
Jody,
Yes.
I have a question for you. To be on this advisory board, do you have to be a City of Tucson resident?
Are
With
you,
special qualifications.
is that the category that you're going under with special qualifications?
Yes.
You know what? I don't know off the top of my head if you have to be a City of Tucson. City of Tucson resident.
Okay.
I think sometimes with special qualifications, with special qualifications, you don't have to live in the district. You don't have to own in the district. You can be outside. But I haven't been asked that question about the City of Tucson resident. You do need to submit an application to the city clerk on their webpage. They have an application to join a BCC. So you would submit, and then you would also provide your resume, that your qualifications, what your special qualifications are. That would then be evaluated by the chair of the Historic Commission, and historic staff, and the director of PDSD to see if you fit. Sometimes people say and I'm not saying that this is you, but sometimes people say that they fall under special qualifications, but they don't. And we would make that call whether or not you fit into that category.
I'm screwed then. Sorry.
I think you qualified.
Hey, Mike, take it easy. Take it easy.
I'm wondering who you made mad. Yeah. Cool.
But I'll put that next, I'll put the nominate new board member on the next one. And in the meantime, Peter can look at that application on the city clerk's webpage. And I'll look up to see if you have to be a City of Tucson resident to be on the board. I don't recall seeing that language, but I want to go back to the code and look.
Just for full disclosure, I think Mary Lou is jumping the gun a little bit here. We had a discussion. I haven't totally decided whether I'm
Come
going.
on.
It's like a.
You didn't get our
Exactly.
check, Peter? You
Yes.
didn't get the check? Just kidding. Just kidding.
Yes, yes.
Do you,
Okay, anything else on the future agenda?
just for clarification, do you want me to include that? And if Peter decides not to, then you just can trail
Yes.
that. Okay.
Yeah, because if we don't have cases to review, or for some reason we can't do it in one meeting, we have to extend it, then it prevents having a special meeting.
Will do.
I'm also would like to add the inventory to the next meeting. I'm hoping to have an update on that by then. Our historic zone inventory.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
Okay, nope. Then the next item is adjourning. Someone wants to move to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mike, Mary Lou, Carol?
Aye.
Elaine, yes. Okay, well, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Next
Thank you.
time, we may actually try to meet in person someday, if we ever, if the COVID numbers go down. We were talking about that, how much nicer it is to meet in person.
So one of these days, mayor and council is meeting in person currently, but the city clerk has not provided direction on all the other BCCs meeting in person. We're waiting for that to see what they say, but until we get direction from the city clerk, we'll continue to meet virtually.
Okay.
Okay.
But I'll let you guys know.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Great,
Thank you.
thank
Talk to you
you.
later.